Good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery with IIMFL and Smart Money Alliance. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time, right about 8 o'clock Central. Sometimes we start about a minute early. It's our opportunity to visit about what's new and what's working, any updates, any corrections, success stories, and to support each of you. Today, we have a really important topic. And the topic is not one that is changing what we do in terms of the role of IIMFL and our three primary areas of our mission, which again are to improve financial literacy, improve credit, and increase access to capital. Instead, it's a new distribution model. Now, the current affiliate model, nothing's changing. The current credit literacy educator model, nothing's changing. We will not be adding any new joint venture partners, and instead, we're going to focus primarily on opening local offices. Now, this is something that I guess you could even argue that we vacillated on over the past year to 2 years. We've always had the vision of having a local presence. Think of Edward Jones or H&R Block or those State Farm, how they're, of course, different industries, but they're within the general financial services arena. And there's power of having a local presence in communities. It increases visibility and accessibility. So we had a leadership meeting, we got it approved, and so we are moving forth now with certainty and aggression to open local offices across the country. And we're going to go into quite a bit of detail today as we're still in pre-launch mode, understand, but I wanted to give each of you an insight into where we're going and why. And if you'd like to be involved in this capacity, that's fine. That's not really the primary concern. It's more to make sure that you understand where we're going with this and why. But again, I want to reiterate, if you're currently an affiliate, no change. You're currently a credit literacy educator, no change. You're currently one of our joint venture partners, no change. Now, any of those three roles might want to pivot into this new role if they wish, but that's not the purpose of our training today. Okay, so our topic is opening local offices nationally. And I'll show you, and this is not pie in the sky, but this is certainly an entrepreneurial model that should generate 7 figures. And so I think right there is where you might want to stop and pause, because if you already have a business model that is generating over 7 figures a year, I don't know that I would want you to be distracted with doing something new or something different. But if you have a passion for helping people, you'd like to earn an adult income, and what you're doing currently isn't working, this might be a really good fit. So let's dig through the details. We're certainly going to be using the question and answer function of Zoom throughout this webinar. So if you have questions, comments, need clarification, please go ahead and put it into the question and answer. Okay, so first, to expand our reach, to secondly, increase local community involvement, third, to promote entrepreneurship, and lastly, to position IIMFL as the nation's leading credit resource, we are going to begin opening local offices across the nation. So again, a little background or context. We started branches a while back, and the vision originally with the branch offices is they would fill a similar role. But a lot of the branch managers wanted to operate virtually, and so we acquiesced to that. And so we have a lot of branches / joint venture partners, but almost all of them are operating in a virtual capacity. So again, that's fine. But where we're going forward is with some new branding, which I'll show you. We want to have a physical presence, a visible presence in the communities. So on this one, while there's flexibility of where the office might be located in terms of an office building and a retail area, so forth, we'll talk about that. There is no wavering on the fact we must have a physical office under this model. Otherwise, we don't have the visible presence. Now, we're going to have one physical office per zip code. And so, there's about 41,000 zip codes across the United States, 41,702. But what you and I know, there are some zip codes that are very populous and some that are very sparse. So not all zip codes are equal, but that is what our board has set forth for our measure of accessibility. Remember, those of us that formed this model, we came from the SBDC model, the Small Business Development Center model. I worked through an SBA grant as an advisor through an SBDC. And while SBDCs have offices across the country, they often, for instance, the SBDC that I was responsible for, we covered a 7-county area in East Texas. So that could literally be an hour or more drive each way for the client to come to our office. Well, guess what happens when you're that unaccessible? Most people don't come to you, right? So here we're going to focus on having one physical office per zip code, and we're going to focus on 3 things: improving financial and credit literacy, and these are the same 3 things that we do as a 501c3. Focus on credit improvement and access to capital. And we'll talk in more detail this morning during this webinar about what that specifically means. So this is not a franchise, so don't misinterpret. Franchises meet certain requirements, and an underlying element of a franchise is control. It's like if you wanted to go open a Subway sandwich shop, you must buy your ham and turkey from Subway. You have to make the sandwiches exactly the way they tell you, and so forth. This is not a franchise. This is called a business license. So it allows for more creativity on your side. So we're going to all be doing the same thing in terms of focusing on these 3 areas, but this is not just a cookie cutter approach, because we realize as this dovetails into your other activities, your dreams, your focus, it needs to allow flexibility. Okay, and we already have one question here from Bill, and it's a good one. And so the town that we're in has just one zip code, but I'll give you an example. In our town, and our town's just a normal town. There's a little bit of wealth and there's a little bit of poverty, but in general, it's just normal, right? Average community. We have 3 Edward Jones offices, which of course, Edward Jones isn't what we do, but I'm using it as an example whereby they do investments and help people retire and plan for the future. So even in rural, our town has 5,000 people. Now the zip code has a few more than that, but our town has 5,000 people. So this is the model we're going to go with, one office per zip code, but certainly you could have multiple offices, which is different than Edward Jones, for example. Edward Jones, they pick where you go when you have just one office. And yes, you can share the office. You can have multiple people working within the office. Okay, so back here. So as far as the location of these physical offices, it's fine if you feel that it should be in an office building. Shopping malls, a lot of times, are a great way to get in front of a lot of foot traffic. And because of the move to online shopping, rental space within some shopping malls are very affordable now. So it couldn't be like a kiosk just in the middle of the mall, because you're going to need to have the ability to meet with people. But shopping malls, traditional retail strip malls, and so forth. So there's not a constraint. We're in a former bank building, right? We're in a 100-year-old former bank building here. So it's up to you what environment you want your local office to be. But this must be staffed full-time. Now, does that mean it has to be full-time for you as the owner of the office? Absolutely not. I've told you many times, my neighbor owns the Sonic here in town. I can look out my window right now as we're talking. I see the Sonic. I bet you $100 he's not over at the Sonic right now, right? He's probably at home or at the gym working out. So it's okay that you own an office and it's part-time to you. But the point here is it must be a full-time office. Frankly, if you really wanted to increase accessibility, you need to run more than 9 to 5, because some people work 9 to 5 and they might need to be able to consult with you or your staff some evenings or some weekends. But again, there's not going to be that element of control where we tell you when you have to be open, but it has to be a full-time office, even though it may be part-time effort for you. What's really important, I'm going to tell you in just a moment why this is so important. We need to provide in-person literacy, and I misspelled topics. We need to provide in-person education. I realize we're still in the midst of a pandemic, but we're moving towards more of an open marketplace, and our bread and butter before all of this craziness happened was in-person education. We have a full curriculum, including topics for children and teens, for adults, and for small businesses for financial and credit literacy. So you might ask, well, does my office need to have enough space to educate people? Ideally, yes, but if you have a remote location for training, that will work. But in a perfect world, your office would have at least a small training room. Now, like here for us, our training room seats a maximum of 10. So we're not saying you have to have a room that fits 30 people. But of course, the smaller number of people that you can accommodate, you'll probably need to have a greater frequency of offerings of the topics because you're going to run out of space. Okay, so we've covered, I think, that the big picture of the why. Now let's drill forward and talk about what we're going to be able to accomplish together. So you're going to see the word community so often, and I'll tie back to this point as well. There is grant money, and rarely we don't like to talk about grant money because normally you don't plan on grants to start or operate a business. Those come and go, and you may not qualify for them. But right now, this is a great time to create this local footprint and then be able to get grants, whether they be local, state, or federal grants that will pay you to do some of this financial literacy. Because normally we don't charge people for the literacy, and then we have a fee structure for the programs themselves. So community involvement, that your local office needs to be a member of your local chamber. You need to be in their directory. You need to know the other business leaders in your community, and they need to know you, because what we do is important. You need to interface with the community leaders. The local bankers need to know what your business model is and how we can help their credit declines and how we help the community. You might want to be involved with local colleges and schools and take financial and credit literacy out to the student population. And again, we need to have routine financial and credit literacy sessions. We have the topics, we have the PowerPoints, we have the instructor guides, we have the participant guides, we have the train the trainers. This has been ready to go for quite some time, but in our current distribution model of affiliates, educators, and joint venture partners, most of those people are dabbling. And I don't mean that negatively, but by the verb dabble to me means they're somewhat involved, but it's not their focus. And we're not going to be able to reach our potential by having just a nationwide team of dabblers. And so that's going to be the difference here. If you're going to run a local office, well, it doesn't have to be your full-time focus. It's not a dabble, right? It is a concentrated effort and initiative with a physical office staffed at least 40 hours a week. So no overreaching control, but it's going to be important to you like it is to us. We have evolved our programming to such an extent that we're having extraordinary success on the credit sweep, access to capital, getting 100% of people funded now within the first 30 days. But we needed to have a better distribution model, and here it is. Now, one of the benefits of having a national footprint with similar programming is now we can finally go after national relationships. One that we're approaching is Keller Williams. So Keller Williams is a large realtor. They have over 100,000 agents. And so our goal when we go to these national players is to say, here we are, here's what we do. We would like to be a trusted and valuable resource, in this case, for your 159,372 real estate agents. So when you have real estate agents that have clients that can't get approved for a mortgage, please come have them come over, sit through our Credit 101 curriculum that's taught locally in the community that the person lives or works, and then we have some resources to help them. So we'll be pursuing national relationships on business financing side, for instance, with Wells Fargo, to try to get their declines for business loans, Keller Williams for their declines on mortgages and real estate transactions and so forth. You just can't really pursue these massive national relationships unless we have a national footprint, which we will have. Our branding, and there was a lot of discussion, and many of you sat in on the focus groups. The decision was to go with the Better Credit Store. And that was influenced heavily by a very successful chain, not a national chain, but a very successful chain called the Cash Store. Now, the Cash Store does something different than us, but it's a name that properly defines what we're going to be doing. Now, with access to capital, of course, you could have people that come to you that don't have credit challenges, but we know in general, many of the clients that come to us for help accessing capital have a barrier. Otherwise, they would have just gone to the bank. And in many cases, that barrier is their credit profile. So what you would be able to do is literally open and own a Better Credit Store in your community. All right, so the number of local offices will be based upon a national footprint, and I alluded to this earlier. There's over 40,000 zip codes. And again, I know that some zip codes are very, very populous and some are very sparse. So in other words, not all zip codes are equal. Like Andre is going to be operating an office in downtown Los Angeles. It's a gold mine, right? We already have a number of zip codes already taken just from the email that went out yesterday. But the bottom line is, if you would like to run a Better Credit Store in your community, you need to let us know and we'll assign that zip code to you. Now we're going to talk a little bit as we go through, but with the zip code, that means that no one else can come in and have in-person education within the parameter of that zip code. But that doesn't keep you from helping people elsewhere. So for instance, you might have someone that comes to you from a different zip code to one of your trainings or just for your assistance because you've had effective outreach. You can help people nationally, but your presence, your focus, your in-person activities are limited to your zip code, so that way you're not stepping on someone else's toes. So if we look at H&R Block, which again is a different business, but it's an analogous model, that they have 12,000 locations. We certainly hope to get to at least 10,000. But we'll talk about our priority markets here in a couple minutes. And I'll show them to you actually. It's on the screen. We'll be on the screen. So again, we're going to continue to have credit literacy educators, no change. Going to continue to have affiliates, no change. Those of you that are joint venture partners, and if you want to stay a joint venture partner, no change. If any of you that are currently with us would rather run a Better Credit Store, then we can pivot you over, and that would be fine. But that's not what I'm here to do, to try to persuade you to open a Better Credit Store. I just need you to understand where we're going and why. All right, so we're going to be handpicking entrepreneurs who share our vision and are willing to position themselves as a local resource. We've had a couple people that have been with us for a while that have done next to nothing, and they're trying to claim zip codes. And so that's a concern, right? Well, if you've not been active before, what's going to change? And so, the circumstances maybe are different, or this model might allow them to be more successful. But we have, again, We've been talking about many of these topics as far as community involvement and being part of the chamber and so forth, and just many of our distribution partners haven't leveraged that. There's going to be a higher expectation with running a local store that you are involved with the local community. So if you are interested, what you would do is just email me, and I need to know the zip code or zip codes that you want, because that's the unique geographic area. We will only have one local office per zip code. And in general, it's on a first come, first served basis. We certainly have a passion for working with minority entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, as well as veteran entrepreneurs. But essentially, we need to have one entrepreneur that's running a local better credit store per zip code. And we talked about the fact that we can help people nationally. I see Adam's got a question. Adam's question is, okay, if I have a local store in Las Vegas, can I still do webinars and reach a national or global audience? And the answer is yes, but it can't be perceived to be in lieu of having an active calendar of literacy events in person. So can we also do online? Of course. We can't ignore that is convenient and accessible for the masses, but we cannot do that in lieu of or instead of having a calendar of events, which we've got all the topics, we've got all the PowerPoints, all the instructor guides, all the participant guides, train-the-trainer material already. We just need a distribution model to better push this literacy out into local communities. And then one of the questions that we had yesterday was, well, and it's kind of similar to what I think Bill just asked this morning, can you have more than one office? Absolutely. The way that the attorney wrote it up, you can have up to 20 local offices. I guess if you wanted more than that, we could revisit it, but the design is no more than 20, and preferably just start with one and make sure that you're good at it. Okay. So first, if you want an area, we need to know the zip code. Email us and we'll let you know. Sounds kind of ridiculous when there's 41,000 zip codes, but of course some zip codes you could argue are more valuable than others. I don't like to phrase it that way because our goal is to have a national footprint and in rural Montana provide the same level and same accessibility as in New York City. That's the difference of our approach, where most outlets focus on only high density areas because of the obvious economic benefits. We've built this model where it will prosper in a small community just as it would large, and we'll talk about numbers here in a minute. Okay, so we've gone through that. So if you're approved for the desired zip code, we're doing 100% financing for the offices. However, a temporary deposit will be placed that's going to hold the zip code while we're getting the 100% financing. It's a 2-year, $12,000 business license. So it's the equivalent of $500 a month, a break even of less than 1. So is it free? No, it's not free. If you want free, be an affiliate. Free is affiliate's free and easy. Nothing's changed there. But if you want to run a local office, we're going to have to provide the training and support. You get the exclusivity. We'll talk about some of the other perks in a moment, including CRM access, which I know many of you would be excited to have. So with that being said, it's a 100% financing, 2-year, $12,000 business license, and it's going to be financed through third parties. We're not doing in-house financing on this, just to make it clear. So this will be financed externally, not internally. And so once you finance the $12,000, then the $1,000 temporary deposit comes back. Now, if you want additional financing I wouldn't recommend buying office space initially, but if you need additional capital to lease space, to refurbish space, to get furniture, to get equipment, to staff, for marketing and such, for your salary, what have you, of course, that can be arranged. Here we go. The business license provides the geographic exclusivity. We're going to have in-person trainings once a month, not an additional cost. There's no nickel and diming here. And so that way you could come in and we would have the onboarding training for all of our Better Credit store owners. You'll have access to, of course, all the financial and credit literacy curriculum. You will have CRM access, and I know many of you have wanted that. So you'll be able to log in and see the status of your clients rather than having to call in and ask or what have you. So CRM access is included, and we're doing a 50-50 revenue share on the revenue streams. This may be different, may be better than what you thought. So let me explain. So let's take Credit Sweep. Credit Sweep, we have a $939 document processing fee. I think everyone is familiar with that. Under the white label, which many of you are doing, you can charge as much or as little as you want for the white label Credit Sweep. But under the Better Credit Store model, it will be a $939 upfront fee, and we will split that 50-50 with you. So you're making around $450, $460, whatever that math is upfront. And then there'll be an additional $1,000 they pay, which can be obtained through financing accomplished through Better Credit if they desire after they exit. So the total cost mirrors pretty much what most of you are doing with white label, right at $2,000, about half of it up front, the other half after they've completed. So yes, we are splitting the upfront with you 50-50. And of course, yes, we're splitting the back end money with you 50-50. So if you do the math, off of each credit sweep, you're making, we can round off pretty safely and say $1,000 per client, but technically $969.50, with half of this upfront at enrollment, the other half in 60 days. On access to capital, as we've talked about, once you have someone in the Credit Sweep program, and if you properly introduce access to capital, many of them will also participate in it because it's a guaranteed $100,000 capital raise. There's no risk, there's no upfront cost, and it can be used to start or grow a business. So with that, again, the client is paying $2,500 deposit after their first capital raise, nothing up front, and paying 6% of the capital raise. Well, you're getting half of that if you're running a local office and half of this. So that adds another $4,250. So for the typical client, you're going to be making a little more than $5,000, which is the addition of this and this. All right, scroll down here. Next, different zip codes have different populations, and we all know that. And so we believe, based upon our calculations and our experience, even in the small markets, we should be able to help at least 20 clients a month, at least 20 clients a month. So what we're going to show you is a revenue projection off of just 20 a month. Obviously, it could be a lot more than that, but let's just work off of 20 a month. So if 20 clients a month are coming through your local store, and then we have this plus this, that equals $5,219.50 generated per client. So if we're having just 20 clients a month, your store is generating just over 6 digits, just over $104,000. If we multiply that times 12, that's where we get 1.2 million. And that's, obviously when we talk about earning over $1 million a year, that can draw scrutiny because so many people are used to making a little bit of money that they ignore the fact that there's a lot of people that make a lot of money. Well, what do you need to do to be able to make a lot of money? You need to have a solution to a problem and be able to monetize that. Well, that's what we're doing together here. So nothing pie in the sky, but certainly on the low end, the projection is 1.2 million. If you're in a more densely populated area, it could be multiples of that, but we're going to keep it conservative and work off of the 1.2 million per office projected revenue. Okay, and again, this is your half, right? Because this is not gross revenue. we already said we're doing a 50-50 split. So this is your portion. I don't want you to misinterpret and say, oh, well, I'll get half of that. I'll make 600,000. No, this is your half. This is your half. Now, in terms of markets, of course, different markets have different zip codes, but just looking at metropolitan statistical areas, and this might be slightly dated census data, but it's still useful to look at. Where we want to get covered this week would be at least the 15 largest markets. We need at least one office in New York City where there's over 19 million people, at least one in Los Angeles, at least one in Chicago, one in Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston, DC area, Miami area, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Phoenix, Boston, San Francisco, Riverside, San Bernardino, Detroit, and Seattle. Now, I was hesitant to put these on here because I'll tell you, backwoods Mississippi, frankly, is just as important as is New York City. That's the difference of our philosophy. We want to take this programming, this literacy out to all communities, to all populations across the country. But with that being said, we can't ignore the fact that if you take the population in the top 15 markets, it's a big segment of the United States, right? So 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, we're at what, 70, I'm guessing 70 million people just in the top 15 markets. Okay, so when we get to what are the local offices going to actually do, certainly developing community awareness and teaching financial literacy is key. If you can't see yourself or having someone you overseeing this, then this is not the right role for you. We're going to create a calendar of financial literacy education, and it could fall under small businesses, adults, and or youth. But we need to have a calendar, and we need to publish that calendar and let the world know, the community know that we're here to improve credit and financial literacy. And so if you don't want to teach it, it's okay. You can have someone else teach it for you. But having in-person credit and financial literacy coursework on a routine basis is non-negotiable. Does that have to happen in your office? No. If you want to arrange a remote location for it, that's fine. Obviously, you're going to have less logistical efforts if you have training capacity in your office versus having to go find a room somewhere else. But that is up to you. A big deal here is you will be conducting the credit analysis. So your office will be pulling credit. You'll be actually set up to pull credit from the bureaus, not asking them to come give you some identity IQ or credit karma. You'll actually be pulling directly from the bureaus and doing a credit analysis. Well, why is that important? Because we know that if you can do a credit analysis on someone's credit report, the chances that they're going to enroll in that 60-day credit sweep is almost 100%. Because now it's not just generic, oh, we can help address derogatories. We can talk specifically about those extra inquiries. Well, ma'am, you have 16 inquiries over the past 12 months. What if some of those were blocked? You have public records, you have a bankruptcy. You specifically look at the derogatory. So the power is in the specificity, not just the generic conversation. So this is a big deal. The local offices will be pulling credit, which is powerful. Okay, and then you're going to also, at the local office, determine if people are qualified for the Access to Capital program. And we had a training on that last week. It's not very simple. It's a 3-step process. And at the local office, you'll be doing the mentoring, which many of our joint venture partners have done, and they're welcome to continue to do. What we'd like you to do, though, is make it available in person for those people that prefer it. When you're talking about sensitive financial information, and sometimes we're not working with the most financially astute clients, to get in front of them eyeball to eyeball, face to face, shoulder to shoulder, and be able to work with them through that 4-week curriculum generates greater compliance and greater perceived value. So there's a high touch element, certainly, to running a local office. Do you have to do that activity? No. You could train someone else and supervise them to do it. You're managing the profit and loss. We've talked about the expected revenue. We do expect 1.2 million or more to roll through your office every year. How much you want to pay yourself, up to you. How much you want to pay for office rent and overhead, up to you. We know that 1.2 million is coming in. You could pay yourself 1 million of that. That's up to you, but just clarifying, you're managing the P&L of your local office. We also will have, and this is something that's been talked about, but it's not been locked in, and now it is, a National Leadership Council. So it's going to be exclusively the owners of the Better Credit stores that will serve on the Leadership Council. We're going to have in-person gatherings or symposiums once a quarter. And so we're earmarked for Tampa, Florida in July. We're going to be in Vegas in September, and we're going to the islands in December. And so we haven't planned 2022, and you all, the Leadership Council will be involved with picking the dates and locations for 2022. We will continue to have these daily Zoom calls. It's the same registration link, but greater focus is going to be placed on supporting those of you that are considering being a local office owner, and then those of you that are. So let's get to your many questions, comments, concerns about this new distribution model. We had one gentleman yesterday, and he seemed flustered. He said, well, everything's changing. Well, no, it's not changing. If you're happy with what you're doing now, nothing changes at all. The programming doesn't change. The affiliate role, the credit literacy educator, the joint venture model role, all of that stays exactly the same. But we can't be lazy or lackadaisical or passive in positioning ourselves to have the best distribution model to be able to help as many people as possible. And this is the direction we're going with that. All right, Carlos said he's all in. Great, Carlos. So what you want to do is, let's see if the zip that you want is still available. And that would be done by emailing in. So we can check to see if your area is available. If not, we can look at alternatives. Thank you, Carlos. And Bill had asked earlier, he's in a small community. Could he have more than one office? And certainly so. Christian asked, are the zip codes based upon demographic or location? Well, I don't even understand that, Christian, because zip codes are zip codes, right? That's the beauty of a zip code. It's a defined geographic area. And so the zip code is based on the zip code. Again, you can help people anywhere across the country, but your in-person education activities and the relationships that you're developing must be within your zip code. Otherwise, you're infringing on someone else's area. And Andre, yep, we have you for downtown LA, but you'll need to go ahead and email us, Andre, which zip or zips that you're wanting for Los Angeles so we can hold those for you. Thank you. And same for you, Christian. Yep. So I see your zip here, but it's not going to get processed just by posting on Zoom. So go ahead and email that in. We'll see if it's available still. And if so, then we can hold that for you, Christian. Oh, okay. Dion's got a great question that I implied, but I wasn't explicit enough. So yes, if you have other services, you're not restricted. So some of you are tax preparers. Some of you are insurance professionals. Some of you have other offerings, and that is fine. Because again, this is a business license, not a franchise. So this can be offered in collaboration with other services that you offer. And as Dion points out, it could be great for cross-selling. So that is fine. Joseph asked for a little bit more clarity of the difference between this and branch offices. So number one, it's more expensive to have a joint venture or a branch office than it is to have a Better Credit store. So this is cheaper. Number two, this requires a physical presence. Most of you that are running branches from before or joint venture partners, you're operating virtually, which is fine. But with this model, we're very clearly focused on having a community presence and a local physical presence, a physical office. So as Dion asked, it doesn't have to be exclusively only for this. You might also be preparing taxes or selling insurance, whatever, in the same space. But we must have a physical space that the community understands, so we have a footprint. So that's the primary difference. Joseph? Each license will be separate per zip code, and frankly, they're transferable. So Bill, let's say that you're the one that mentioned you're in a small town. Let's say you start with 2 zip codes. It'd be 2 different licenses, and you might decide to grow one and sell it for a profit. You can do that. So that is the beauty. Each license will be each zip code will be a separate license. And Andre brings up a good point. In some areas, we're going to have to be able to address other languages than English, and so we're working on that. Barry says he's in. So Barry, again, just let us know what zip code you're wanting so we can get that saved for you. Peggy wants to be in Brooklyn, which is fine. Again, just got to get us the zip code so we can see if it's available and hold it for you. Jackie asked, when will each store be up and running? Well, that's based upon us getting entrepreneurs in place to run each local store. So they all won't start at the same time. We'll start opening them up in the month of May. Let's see here. And I would anticipate safely a 90-day ramp up time to be able to, from the time that the deposit is submitted until we're up and operational, would be conservative. What we're not going to do is we're not going to half-ass it, right? So until everything's in place, we're not going to flip the switch on. I don't want to say it was a mistake, but a lot of what we've done in the past is we allowed someone to kind of stick their toes in the water, and then we started, and we didn't have full operation. We won't do that. We won't do that this time. James says he's in, so fine, James. Just again, we need to know what zip code you want so we can get that reserved for you and get the process going. As far as branding, these are going to be the better credit stores. Now, you could have other operations, but the better credit store is our branding for this initiative. Mark says probably the best idea he's heard in a long time. Thank you for that. Anna Marie says great. Okay, so we ran a bit long, and we'll continue to have this discussion. The purpose today was to announce the pre-launch of our initiative to open these local offices. So thank you so much. We'll see you back tomorrow with more information. Bye-bye.